Welcome to the dissertation defense video for a phenomenological study of digital business simulation games for corporate learning by JManjorin for consideration for Boise State University's Department of Educational Technology Educational Doctorate Program. Corporate learning is evolving from static curricula that deals with specific roles to a far more dynamic, responsive landscape of development. Businesses need to provide relevant training for current roles, which specifically focuses on near-term competencies, as well as other learning opportunities that prepare their workforce for future capabilities and skills. Of the multitude of concerns for corporate learning departments, the following three represent some of the greatest challenges found in the modern workplace. The first challenge is the time an employee has available to dedicate to learning and development in the average work week. Second, corporate learning organizations need to quickly adjust to market pressures. It's imperative that the business ensures their workforce is competitive and provides the latest knowledge and skills to their employers. The third and perhaps most challenging issue is the rapid change in how the next generation of employees want to consume learning. With competitive landscapes changing more rapidly, continuous development becomes the norm. Providing an environment for employees to continually hone necessary business skills and abilities and apply them in real-world situations can help organizations maintain a skilled workforce as well as prepare for future disruptions. Among other valuable characteristics, digital business simulation games can provide learning tailored to the way the audience wants to consume it and safe spaces for employees to explore topics. That, coupled with DBSG's inherent potential to scaffold learning to increase complexity, makes it a solution worth examining from an organizational perspective. Given the perceived value business simulations provide regarding a variety of conceptual frameworks such as constructivism and motivation, engagement, and retention, there is significant lack of research around the alignment to business strategy and objectives, use, and outcomes of DBSGs within a corporate learning environment. The research methodology selected will be a phenomenological study of L&D leaders in financial service organizations and their experiences with building and implementing DBSGs. The selected methodology aligns to the needs of the research by allowing for open-ended questions, as well as documenting and codifying the experience of practitioners who have been involved in designing and implementing DBSGs. The conceptual framework is a working theory of the phenomena that the researcher is investigating, and conceptual frameworks function to inform the design of the study and enable the writer to assess the outcome of their research. In order to provide this study with a guide and establish various benchmarks, the conceptual framework for this research follows a phenomenological approach based on financial service industry dimensions and through established areas of focus. Research questions become the impetus for the entire study. In examining this topic, the research questions will focus on how and why a DBSG was selected. The first question examines the link between organizational goals and how they impacted the decision-making experiences that led to the development and implementation of a DBSG. And two, simply put, did it work? What was the perceived impact of the DBSG on learner motivation, engagement, and retention? The study is worthwhile for several key reasons. There have been many enhancements to digital business simulations regarding their functioning across the dimensions of realism, accessibility, compatibility, flexibility, and scale, simplicity of use, and communication. With these enhancements, a need to understand the why and how businesses are implementing DBSGs becomes paramount to gain alignment between the perceived value of the simulation and the organizational goals. The study is novel as there were no comprehensive studies found that identified the alignment of DBSGs to financial service institution business goals and motivating factors used to select DBSGs as a vehicle for corporate learning. The literature review provides the background to ultimately selecting the conceptual framework and the methodology for this study and explores research on the history and functionality of business simulations, digital game-based simulations, corporate decision-making, employee motivation and engagement, and gamification. For the purpose of this video, I won't go into the depths of the literature review content. However, I will review the topics contained in the lit review and the reasons why they were important to form the basis and background of the study. Corporate decision-making in L&D, identifying key concepts in strategic decision-making for corporate projects in general and learning projects specifically will be integral to identifying and documenting proper interview questions for L&D leaders regarding the dimensions of the proposed conceptual framework. Structural process for decision-making. Addressing the organizational conditions that exist and can therefore be documented can help lend structure for analysis of decision-making regarding any project or program. but even more so in the specific instance of the implementation of a learning technology program. Digital game-based learning. It would be impossible to research this topic without a very comprehensive review of game-based learning in general and DBSG specifically. Not only the historical context, but also studies regarding what DBSGs provide. Motivation and engagement. Understanding motivators found within DBSGs and the design and development of motivation, as well as a taxonomy of intrinsic motivators in serious games, was necessary for the examination of how those may impact the learner's engagement with the experience and may inform additional implementation practices. Gaps in research. Information on simulations and games for the financial service industry is extremely sparse, aside from the nominal findings on accounting and top management simulations, and studies on the decision-making and subsequent impact on DBSGs in financial services is non-existent, and thus helped validate the need for this study. And finally, qualitative research methodology. Upon reviewing literature on business simulations, decision-making methodology, and gamification and motivation, a transcendental phenomenological research methodology was determined to be ideal for answering the research questions presented for this study. And therefore, a review of qualitative research methodology, practices, and previous qualitative studies was necessary to validate this decision. The purpose of this qualitative phenomenological study is to explore the experiences and perceptions of those experiences of a criterion sample of 6 to 12 L&D leaders in the financial services industry. Then, analysis would assist in identifying the circumstances each organization faced in their decision to implement a digital business simulation game, a DBSG, the details of design and development, the perception of learner engagement and retention, and the lessons learned from the experience. The research method. The research investigated the organizational goals and the decision-making experiences that led to the development of a DBSG. In addition, the research investigated the experience implementing the DBSG and the impact on motivation, engagement, and retention. Why? Qualitative research provides the framework to explore, define, and assist in understanding the social and psychological phenomena of organizations and the social settings of individuals. It is also necessary in order to understand the alignment with organizational goals and the decision-making process as described in the conceptual framework. Who? The population for the study, 6 to 12 learning leaders from various professional organizations with experience implementing a DBSG for their organization. So the design. The purpose of the phenomenological study is to understand how L&D leaders in the financial service industries experienced the decision to develop a DBSG, as well as to explore their experience throughout the project and the perceived efficacy of the results of the effort for the business through the lens of the organization, as well as the L&D leader. The study analyzed recurring themes and shared experiences of the participants and aimed to uncover the details of the participants' decisions while developing a DBSG solution for their organization. Data analysis and results. 8 participants were interviewed, each providing their experiences and perceptions from having taken part in at least one DBSG implementation over the past 7 years. From the participants' transcribed audio interviews, I captured codes from the text and structured them into parent and child codes within each of the questions in the semi-structured interview. As I developed and categorized codes across all transcripts, themes began to emerge. Findings. Theme 1 was focused around needs intake, coupled with leadership understanding and support of the needs, with 22 distinct references through the 8 interviews. Common trends in the theme included the sense that leadership needed to be empowering and actively involved from the start. Participant 1 stated, in the sense that they were very interested in exploring and innovating an approach that was unique. This was further reflected in other participants' responses that leadership needed to either have or look to gain clarity regarding the needs of the organization. One sub-theme that was represented by half the participants was the value of getting not only leadership sign-off, but also leadership representation and buy-in for the conceptualization and design of the DBSG. Participants 1, 4, 6, and 8 each referenced a phase in early conceptualization or design where leadership buy-in and involvement was a positive impact towards the success of the program. Finding 2, safe space. The concept of providing learners a safe space to practice emerged as a consistent goal and reason, as referenced by 62.5% of the participants in the study. Most participants referenced the concept of having a safe space to practice, and they further clarified in the content above that the safe space was not just for psychological safety or a place to experiment. It was also noteworthy as a constructivist approach to learning. It used experiential learning to construct an approach and scaffolded knowledge from the learner's decisions and experiences, as well as the experience of other learners participating in the DBSG alongside them. Finding 3. As participants discussed the goals for the DBSG or the reason they decided to develop one, the concept of innovating on current learning opportunities emerged as a consistent goal and reason as referenced by 62.5% of the participants in the study. Most participants referenced the concept of innovating on current learning curricula and experimenting with offerings to learners, and they further clarified that innovation was not only to provide a new experience as a motivating factor, but also to change the approach of learning interventions to address key strategic needs for the organization. Theme 4, increased engagement. In support of research question 2, interview questions 13, 14, 15, and 16 within the script allowed participants to elaborate on learner participation and the impact of the DBSG on motivation, engagement, and specific observed impacts relevant to these topics. As participants responded to these questions, a clear theme emerged around realizing a higher degree of learner engagement, as referenced by 75% of the study. They further clarified in the content above that connection to relevancy of role, as well as realism in scenarios and connection to emotions, were key motivational components leading to deeper engagement. Findings, Theme 5, impact of measurement. In support of research question 2, questions 13 and 14 in the script allowed participants to elaborate on measurement results from DBSGs. As participants responded to these questions, a clear theme emerged around positive impact resulting from a variety of measurement efforts, as 87.5% of participants in the study noted. They discussed measurement impact across a variety of measurement levels and areas within the DBSG. One key factor participant 1 commented upon was the ability to get real-time results from the DBSG and apply that to a live debrief and the power this mechanism contained. Participant 3 reinforces the ability of the DBSG to measure not only immediate knowledge transfer and satisfaction, but also value. Additional context around the positive measurement results was not only from knowledge transfer or satisfaction with the experience, but also long-term gap and needs analysis. Participant 5 stated, "We also started to use those simulators to help us figure out where our biggest needs were for training and being able to provide very accurate data. What I think it did more than seeing an improvement was it highlighted areas not only where we might want to train more, it also highlighted areas of where we needed to improve process and procedure within the organization." Theme 5, Subtheme 1, challenges with measurement. While most participants recognized the immediate impact of a DBSG to the learner, there were identified challenges with longer-term measurement efforts for the organization relative to the simulation. In support of research question 2, questions 15 and 16 from the script allowed participants to elaborate on measurement results from the DBSG and specifically around what the challenges were represented in implementing the DBSG. As participants responded to these questions, a clear subtheme emerged around challenges of measuring long-term effectiveness and organizational impact, as 50% of the participants in the study noted. When discussing challenges encountered with development and deployment of a DBSG, they indicated that the biggest challenge for me is really measuring the effectiveness. The more complex the situation gets, the harder it is to tell it's the training that it actually had an impact. Now these simulations are necessarily complex, and so that makes the measurement necessarily difficult. And additionally, participant 8 went so far as to warn against trying to measure too much. Conclusions and recommendations. As organizations continue to feel a squeeze to ramp up talent to higher degrees of competency faster than ever before, they'll continue to explore new technologies and innovative ways to develop individuals more efficiently in support of the needs of the organization. Not only will they look to onboard new hires to greater levels of competency, but organizations will need to prepare the existing workforce for future capabilities and skills. This study examined the implementation of DBSGs in a regulatory environment. My experiences and the available pool of potential interview candidates led to refinement of this research, not only to include a specific industry, but also to identify the key factors leading up to the implementation of the DBSG, as well as the impact of the implementation of the DBSG on learners and the organization. The results of the interviews and the subsequent data analysis indicated a strong need for an appropriate needs assessment by the organization as part of the preliminary decision-making phase. Further examination of participant responses also told the story of what can happen when organizations omit this key part of the decision-making process. Theme 2 explored the goal of creating a safe space for learners to practice and explore content on a variety of topics, or a safe space to practice skills and to learn from their mistakes and construct a framework of knowledge to apply on the job. Theme 2 directly supported a situative perspective of learning in which learners are processing information through a process of interactions that depends on the context or specific setting. 10 distinct references from 5 participants discuss the need for a safe space to learn and the benefits of this environment to the learner. Theme 3 examined a reason for pursuing the development of a DBSG, namely the need to innovate on current learning curricula or provide a differentiated experience for the organization's learners. Concepts like bringing the curriculum to life, or providing a new experience, or doing something besides checking the box, breaking the mold, and the need to do more were all primary reasons quoted from the participants to explore and ultimately to implement a DBSG within the organization. Analysis of the themes in context with the factors leading to the decision to implement a DBSG provided further recognition of the need for partnership between L&D departments and general organizational decision-making and strategy. Research question 2, results and findings. The results of the analysis of participant data indicated that a DBSG has the potential for a higher degree of learner engagement. There is a well-established correlation between motivation, engagement, and increased knowledge gain. Theme 4 identified that most participants experienced an increase in learner motivation and engagement across a variety of factors, helping to reinforce these findings. Participants discussed motivation as either intrinsic or extrinsic. Examples of intrinsic motivators that accompany the deployment of the DBSG were the need for the DBSG to be relevant to their needs and to provide real-world and immersive experiences. Theme 5 indicated a higher degree of engagement would naturally lead to greater positive measurements results. Faria and Wellington in their 2004 study identified various advantages of business simulation games. Consistency of data within measurement results, performance outcomes, degrees of confidence, and general comments from participants suggested that DBSGs are providing learners with greater satisfaction within the experience and greater opportunities for learning transfer. The results also suggested that DBSGs provide organizations with safe spaces for learners to apply information, make critical decisions, and in a few instances, recognize significant ROI or positive organizational impacts. Emergent themes. Additional questions were asked with open-ended data collected from the participants' experiences regarding lessons learned or best practices concerning DBSG implementation. The first emergent theme was budget for development and maintenance. Participants mentioned budget considerations for development and then considerations for maintenance, which also led into qualitative data on shelf life and customization costs. Some 62.5% of participants mentioned the costs of development and maintenance at some point in the interviews. This is a significant consideration for organizations as they explore DBSGs because they need to examine the initial cost need as well as the cost of delivery and maintenance. Challenges and failures. In response to the question, what would you have done differently? Participants included a variety of topics as their responses to provide context to their experiences and what lessons they had learned from implementations of a DBSG. 3 participants indicated that challenges with technology had a negative impact on the delivery of the DBSG. 3 participants also indicated the need for extending project timelines and adding more time to phases of analysis, design, and development to impact the delivery and outcomes of the implementation of a DBSG positively. Each response discussed the importance of providing teams enough time to accomplish the necessary tasks for design or development, and, in the case of participant 7, a revalidation of the needs and audience analysis. Success factors. Shelf life needs to be considered from an ROI perspective. 3 participants mentioned the consideration of shelf life in the analysis of a DBSG as a solution. Data to support the learning. 3 participants also mentioned that audience analysis supports the sim design as a key factor for success, meaning the learner needs to be engaged in the analysis as well as the design and development phase as a key stakeholder. Delivery model. Each participant provided details on the delivery model. 62.5% of participants discussed the flexibility of delivery approach and a hybrid model for delivery, with most of the delivery taking place longitudinally, meaning over a period of time, with elements of digital interaction, both synchronous and asynchronous, and either virtual or in-person classroom-based portions. Half the participants also discussed the value of this model in the form of the positive impact of feedback from both the sim and facilitators between rounds. They reported that a larger degree of learning was happening between rounds in the sim, where reports from the DBSG were available to facilitators, and facilitators could tailor remediation or additional instruction based on the reporting from the sim. Best practices. With acknowledgement from the participants around the value they've all experienced, there was an opportunity to ask follow-up questions specific to best practices or lessons learned to help other corporate L&D managers or executives make better decisions from needs analysis through implementation and evaluation phases. The learner as part of the process. Include the learner from the beginning. The value of the learner as part of the design and testing process in a DBSG was mentioned by a variety of participants. Budget. DBSGs can be costly to build and maintain. They take a lot of time and resources through all phases. In addition to this, there's a cost associated with maintenance. Given the needs and strategies of organizations changing more frequently now and learners needing to reskill or upskill with that pace of change, maintenance of content and experience must be considered. Complex systems with multiple learning outcomes addressing multiple needs takes time. Multiple participants indicated that they would have planned for much longer timelines for design, development, and testing. DBSGs, while valuable, are also not common tools for L&D organizations to build or buy, and therefore do not have established or repeatable processes relative to the implementation. And real world applicable and connected to emotions. One of the pillars of adult learning is that in order to foster engagement and retention, a learning intervention needs to be relevant to the needs of the adult learner and immediately applicable or provide a perceived value to foster that engagement. DBSGs are no different, and participants in the study emphasize this fact. While this is relative to best practices one, including the learner as part of the process, this topic needed its own subsection to include feedback provided from the participants relative to practicality, approachability, and connectivity to the learner's role or needs. Recommendation for further research. Further studies on the implementation of DBSGs in other organizations and industries are warranted to examine whether the results of this study are consistent and whether there are differentiators or variables based on types of organization to refine the needs gathering, decision-making, alignment to strategy, and implementation of DBSGs further. Additionally, this study revealed gaps in the information as well as inconsistencies of experience. An example of this is within specific measurements of DBSGs. While 5 participants mentioned increasing competency as a goal for development, clearly defined measurement planning and examination of knowledge gain and transfer was missing from the participants' experiences. Within this potential gap, an examination of modality and delivery method is also warranted to identify the impact on motivation, engagement, and retention. This phenomenological study examined the experiences of 8 L&D professionals with experience implementing DBSGs in financial service organizations. The study also provided an opportunity for participants to share their experiences of the implementation process and how the DBSG impacted learner motivation and engagement. Finally, it offered the opportunity for participants to reflect on their experiences and offer their thoughts on success factors, challenges with, and perceptions of DBSGs from their perspectives. The themes that emerged were consistent with the theoretical and conceptual frameworks relevant to DBSGs, and they reinforced the positive impact that DBSGs can have in organizations looking to provide impactful learning solutions to complex problems or scenarios in alignment with the strategic needs of their business.